Hey, y'all, welcome to the Career and Technical Education Podcast. I'm Brandon Grace.
And I'm Randall Huss.
And today we have our boss again, Miss Amy Baker, to talk about CTSOs and travel. How are you today?
Great. Thanks for having me back.
Awesome.
So as you guys know, we've got some big trips coming up. We had lots of folks qualify for state for Skills USA, but not just skills. We've got HOSA, we've got FBLA, we've got FCCLA. We've got a lot of groups out there traveling.
Absolutely.
And so as we were talking the other day, Miss Baker is like, you know what? It'd be a really great idea to give some great tips on traveling with students, because let's be honest, that can be a little scary.
It is.
So.
And especially whenever you have like 30 kids and you're the only teacher with some of those kids sometimes.
Absolutely.
Because no other advisor will come, or it's just a trip that's like a day trip and you just going down there. It gets scary as a teacher. And so that's kind of what this podcast is about, how to deal with that.
That's right. So many districts too. I mean, you got to watch the budgets because there's a finite amount of money, you know?
Right.
And so a lot of times it does end up being a minimal amount of advisors with a maximum amount of kids.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad
Smart,
that you want to share.
strategic, and safe.
That's it. That's it. So
and fun.
And fun.
Yeah, and
They are fun, though.
Fun. Last. Fun is last. Zero fun. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, so what are some of your ideas and tricks and tips for how to be safe on these trips?
Well, it's a great, exciting time to be able to travel with kids. I'm sure we have listeners all across the country who are getting ready to get on a bus or drive in a Suburban or in a large passenger van, which can seem overwhelming. But I think some of those tips is first knowing that you have a plan. So teachers may not think about the fact that a high school student doesn't know how to pack for a trip.
Right.
And some of these students have never stayed in a hotel room before. Right. Some of them have never been to a swimming pool before. And so having some really clear rules and expectations for, will you allow students to swim? Will you not allow students to swim? Understanding your district policy about those kinds of things. Does a policy exist? But I always start with a packing list and a letter home to parents. And that's not necessarily a permission slip, because most of the time parents know their kids are going to go on a state trip. But it's contact information. What if there's an emergency? Who does the parent get a hold of if they can't reach their child? Who do I get a hold of? So I always love to send home a parent letter, start with a packing list. I think you absolutely need to have some sort of powwow or pre-travel meeting with your kids, and whether that's one-on-one with each student, if it's a small group, or an after-school meeting, or a Saturday meeting, or whatever that looks like. I think kids need to know what you're going to hold them accountable for and how you're going to have fun safely on a student trip.
You know, that was one of the best trips we did. We had a parent meeting right before state skills, and the sad thing was so many parents didn't come.
Sure.
You know, that was really surprising to me. Like, if I'm sending my kid with some rando I don't know, you know, I'm like, I want to at least meet the person, but there were a lot of folks that didn't show up.
But I think that's great to your point. A parent meeting is not a catch-all. There has to be other forms of communication. So whether you're using a reminder or GroupMe or whatever your district platform is, I would encourage you to have a way to be able to safely communicate with students while you're there without using their direct cell phone numbers, and a way to communicate with parents throughout the trip. I loved to send pictures home. So group pictures. Sure. I knew who I could take pictures of and who was protected under FERPA laws that I couldn't take pictures of. And I wanted to send those to parents. Hey, look what, Randy did today. Check out all the fun we're having. Make sure you're posting on social media posts where appropriate, and make it exciting so that parents can follow along with the trip.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like whenever we're planning for, state contest coming up, I have a packet of information about what the students, the expectations, what they can and can't do from district policy, and things that will send them home from the trip.
Sure.
And then also, having a basic itinerary of things that we're going to do, and
they always
times.
Need an agenda.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then we go into make sure you pack this shirt, these pants, those shoes, and then everything else can be comfortable the rest of the time. Just make sure it's school appropriate. And then it's a permission slip after that, medical form, all that. So.
And then my next tips is bring extras.
Yes.
So come with
Right.
extra batteries, come with feminine hygiene products, come with Band-Aids. Please bring Band-Aids on your trip. Come with a first aid kit. You are the teacher responsible. Kids aren't going to think about some of the things that they may need. Come with tape or glue or scissors. If you're traveling with FCCLA or HOSA and you have a board or a presentation, come with those things. Come with extra chargers, cell phone chargers. They're hot commodities to be able to pass them around and share them with students when needed.
Okay, so we're kind of talking pre-cap. Let's recap just the
Absolutely.
pre-contest. So we're talking making sure that you're communicating everything home, rules, regulations, packing list, and communicating with parents. Also checking district policies, right? Making sure everything's good there.
Checking grades, if that's a part of your process.
Absolutely.
And don't be the teacher that checks grades the day before the trip and has to be the dream buster to tell a student that they're not eligible. Check those early and check those often.
That's good. That's good. And then making sure as a teacher that you have your stuff as far as even your extra stuff, but also your paperwork. I know like when I was a teacher, we had to make sure that we had the permission slips with us at all times. Consent to treat, different things like that, because you never know. I took a bunch of kids to Washington, D.C., and had a kid break an arm at the Holocaust Museum.
Wow.
And so we went to Baltimore Memorial, and I was really glad that I had the permission to treat, because we needed that. So having all those things. Okay, so now
we're getting on the bus.
It's go time. It's morning. Let's go. All right, now what
on the bus. So depending on how you travel, first of all, I wanted to make sure that I always controlled what type of media was played in a vehicle or on a bus. And that seems simple, but for a new teacher, you may not think that you have to set some guidelines about what kind of music do you allow or what kind of videos are played. So I always brought my own old school DVDs to put on the travel bus to be able to travel with. But something that I loved and that I think is important to kids is snacks. So if you have any type of social fund, activity fund, fundraiser, donors that can bring snack bags for your kids. I was the teacher walking up and down the bus with a Ziploc bag full of snacks for each kid on day one. Here's your snacks for the bus. Here's your snacks for the bus. They seem to be much more quiet, supportive, attentive when they have snacks. And that's a way to get your student officers involved, as well as to allow them to pack all the snack bags, not something the teacher should do.
So do you go through afterwards and here's the trash bag? Here's the trash bag?
Every hour, I was actually the hourly trash police, because you have to teach kids what type of professional behavior you expect from them. So walk up and down the aisle, have your officers walk up and down and collect trash, or anytime you stop at a gas station to refuel, everybody get your trash. I'm checking the seats, get your trash. And then I know it sounds silly, but thank your driver. It's hard to be a bus driver, and it's hard to travel with students, particularly high school students. So teach your students what it means to be thankful and to be grateful for having a driver. And I always would have a line of kids, thank you, thank you, thank you, as they got off the bus.
That's awesome.
Disclaimer on that, if you do snacks, which I think is a great idea, be aware of allergies.
Peanut free.
Yeah, you're going to be, as far as like for us here, like if we're going on Skills USA, we're going to have kids from different chapters all over, different classes.
Different religions.
Kids different religions. Kids that I as an advisor may not know. And so I may not know that another student has a peanut allergy or something like that. So that's something to really communicate with your other advisors. Any adults that are on that bus, make sure you're communicating that well.
Absolutely. Some advisors really believe in like a bus seating chart. I never did that per se, but I do think you know your kids better than anyone. So if that's something where you want to make sure your freshmen aren't sitting next to your seniors, or the students you're a little bit more attentive to are sitting closer to you, you're welcome to do a bus seating chart. It just never worked for me.
Yeah, we have I never did a bus seating chart, but we always had, whenever the kids find their spot on the bus, that's their spot. You don't touch their spot.
Right.
And if somebody's sitting in their spot, it becomes an issue. And it's like, was he sitting there on the way down? Yeah. Well, let him sit there and you can sit over there, but my chair's broken. Well, I'm sorry. You chose that seat, but you got here late, whatever. Right. But you're right though. I mean, but a bus seating chart could be a good idea.
Sure. Yeah. So my craziest trip was taking 80 students to a state competition, and there were 3 of us as advisors between those 80 students. So we really made sure that an advisor was over a specific group of kids, that we kind of knew where the advisor was on the bus. We were taking 2 buses, and every single seat would be filled to a bus. So it wasn't going to be feet up on the backs of the chairs and laying down sleeping in the aisles. So we really had to talk to our kids, hey, it's going to be a tight ride. It's going to be a tight ride. Be ready to be sitting next to somebody. Be respectful. Have fun with the person you're sitting next to. And we also talked about blanket etiquette. You don't tie them up on the ceilings or tie them to all the people that have never traveled before. Right. Thinking, are these real things? Do kids really tie blankets to the windows? They build forts.
Right. And we also have to tell them not to lay in the aisles.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Right. There was... oh my gosh, I have so many stories of kids on buses. But one of the, whenever we talk about the seating etiquette and things like that, and not putting your feet up on the seat, and that's a lot of times that's the bus driver's rules. And sometimes, we do have, we're lucky enough to have, tour buses that we take that are owned by the school district. But some people have to take the Greyhounds or whatever. And so you just got to make sure that you're respecting the rules of that driver because that's their bus. It's their pride and joy. And it's really just teaching the kids that respect.
We had drivers that would request us each year. So I was so happy when we put in for a trip, we would have drivers lining up trying to kind of
That's cool.
want to come with us because they had traveled with us in the past. Drivers get snack bags too.
Anything else that as we're traveling that we need to be aware of as far as advisors go?
I think one thing just overall, I would say, whether it's before the trip or driving to the location or while you're there, is that the teacher really is the one that needs to set the example. So the teacher leads by their character, by their tone, by their language, and by their example. And that includes being on a bus. And I know it's hard. Advisors want to sleep and they want to take naps just like everybody else. And trips can be late nights. But that advisor is taking care of those kids. They are the steward for that trip.
Yeah. And as a parent, you want them to have that attitude, and we can argue all day long. Well, it's not really fair to ask an advisor to be on 24/7. And you're right.
But we do it because we love it.
That's exactly
we do it because we love it, and we know how powerful and valuable those experiences are.
For sure.
The one thing that I always tell people is that after nothing is as tired as after a Skills USA state trip tired.
That's right.
Because as the teacher, you go to bed super late because you're watching hallways for kids coming out.
You're sitting. Yes, rooms. That's a great strategy.
Yes, I mean me and one of the teachers here, we used to sit in the hallway and play Uno. And just or do grades or whatever. We just sit in the hallway and talk. And when kids, you see a kid head pop out, you'd be like, just kind of snap.
And as much as we want to believe that students are all going to follow the rules and they're all going to listen to the expectations, once you knock on those doors and you do those room checks at night, and please do the room checks at night. We can talk about that too, but be the advisor that sits in the hall.
Yes.
Be the advisor that's extra mindful. Be the one that doesn't go to bed right away or doesn't go to sleep early. Care about the kids. Put the kids first.
So let's talk about it now. Okay, so now we've arrived wherever we're at. Let's talk about, the procedures, things that we need to think about as advisors, especially if you've never taken a kid on a trip or maybe you're an administrator out there and you're like, oh, I got asked to go to HOSA. I don't even know what HOSA stands for.
Sure.
Like, what do I do?
And every CTSO has a little bit different check-in procedure. So sometimes one advisor has to go to check-in while the other advisor goes to the hotel and gets ready for the hotel registration. And there's a lot of preparation in putting hotel room lists together and making sure that everyone is in a safe and comfortable environment and addressing any hotel concerns with parents and families before the trip. But extra check those rooms. I was the teacher, would say, okay, everybody out in the hallway. You come out in the hallway, I'm going in. I'm checking the bathroom. I'm making sure there's no one hiding in the shower. There's no one under the beds. There's no one on the balcony. We're going to make sure that these are safe rooms for all of the students involved. And then have the kind of relationship with your student that if there is something that is unsafe, that they feel comfortable to come and tell you.
Yeah. One thing that I always tell them, because room check or curfew's 11 at the Skills USA.
Oh no, it's 10:40.
10:40. That's it. Yeah, you get them there by 10:40. But I go do my room checks at 11 just to make sure everybody's in there. Half the time the kids are already asleep because they're exhausted from the day anyways. But I always tell my students that if you need anything, do not come out of that room. Call me.
Yes.
My phone is next to my head. And if you need anything, give me a call. I will. If you need ice, I will go get you ice. I don't care. If you forgot your toothpaste, I'll go down to the front desk and get you some toothpaste. You're kind of the servant at that point because the kids literally are locked into their spot. You need to make sure that they feel comfortable enough that they can call you, especially females telling me, hey, I need feminine hygiene products. I'm like, I got them. And usually I pack them. I have like a go bag.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and it has a bunch of that stuff in there. And they always laugh at me. And I'm like, I have no idea how many times I have to refill this thing because people just forget those things. And you're there just making sure that the kids are, because you're there for the kids. You're not there for yourself because if you're there for yourself, I wouldn't be that tired.
Yeah, right. No doubt.
And I would say along with that, engage with your kids.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Don't be the advisor that is drinking their coffee and sitting in the hotel lobby hanging out with their buddies or their friends. Be with your kids. Play board games with your kids in the lobby. Go out to dinner with your chapter. Make that a family type experience, again, because you lead by example. And that's the place where they're going to find themselves. These kinds of trips is where they're going to find self-confidence and learn what it means to be a professional.
For sure.
One thing that I like whenever I've gone on these trips, that's whenever I've built those relationships the most with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that have gone on trips with me seem to be the ones that contact me to this day. Like today, I showed you that one of Michael, and he just randomly, I see him once a year, and he brings me a 12-pack of Coke Zeros once a year. It's kind of a thing, and it just makes me laugh. And he's my favorite student of all time now, and no, don't tell the other ones. But
It's not what he said.
but no, he always does that. But he went on multiple of those trips with me, and he came back, and he came back a different kid after some of these trips because they do change them because it makes them grow up a little bit. They had that little bit of freedom, but they didn't get in trouble, so they're like, "Oh, I did good," And it's really good to see, and I love these trips. I mean, they're fun.
And recognize that. I mean, the most successful chapters and groups are the ones that do a team huddle. At night, that are getting together. Hey, is everybody here? Let's talk about our night. Let's reflect on what went well today. What's our goal for the next day? And just having those check-ins with your kids throughout the experience.
I think that's so valuable, being able to talk about, go over the day, go over tomorrow. Like, all right, you got to be up at 6 o'clock because your contest starts at 7:30 or those kind of things. I think those are super valuable.
Make sure they have their equipment ready. Make sure they have their clothes ready. You're wearing this, not this. You know what I mean? Because
and reassure them. They're nervous.
Yes.
For sure.
You got this. You get some sleep tonight. Don't stay up all night. And
I will say on that note, and that's one thing that I've seen several times, and I know you guys have experienced this too. Those kids and the advisors, but mainly the kids, they're stressed, they're tired, they're at their wits' end, and if anything emotional is going to happen, it's going to happen on a trip.
Yes.
And so, what's the first thing that happens? Well, they're going to call their advisor, and hey, I need to talk to somebody, right? So the first piece of advice I'm going to put out there for anybody is never, ever, 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 ever be alone with a student.
Correct.
Ever. No matter what the circumstance, no matter what is going on, grab another human, even if it's another youth, but hopefully another adult. But just don't put yourself in that situation because you never know. Like an accusation can end your career. Right. So just don't put yourself in that place.
And again, you lead by example.
That's exactly right. So, but be prepared too. And again, you talked about that relationship. That happens way before that trip, which is great. But that also means that they're going to be very comfortable talking to you. I know your students, Brandon, are going to be, they're going to talk to you.
They always do.
Absolutely.
We usually end up having a full on, the session with several of the kids because they have a lot, these kids have a lot going on. And then you're there, you're the adult, you're there to listen to them. And these are the types of things that have kept me teaching because it makes me realize why I'm teaching. And these kids need me.
And do you want to be available for these kids at midnight to have the cry fest? I mean, no, but are you going to? Kind of like what you said.
Yeah. Sure. And
We're
that's
there for
where
the kids.
that's where, again, you understand policy and laws and safety precautions to protect yourself and to keep kids safe.
Yeah, for sure.
So one thing we have not talked about yet, and I think this is a fairly common issue and no district is immune for this, but how do you handle it if a kid doesn't show up for your trip? So what if someone is scheduled to compete and they sleep in, or they miss the bus, or they get sick the night before, or they just choose to not come because they got too nervous, or they didn't want to go, or they'd rather go to something else that weekend? How do you handle a no-show policy? Do you as an advisor have a no-show policy? How do you help hold kids accountable? Because sometimes you're paying $100, $150 for registration for these kids. You're paying for meals and hotel rooms. So what have you seen or what has worked for you?
Well, in the past, we've always said that if the kid no-shows, if they get sick, that's a different thing because you can't control it. You sleep in, that's no. You just, I'm not going to go. We usually make them repay the registration fee because we're not, at that point, we're not paying for their food. And the hotel, you
needed regardless.
Yeah, we needed it anyway. So we're already paying for that room. So, but usually we'll make them repay the registration fee. So that way we're not out. Sometimes we can get that registration fee. You can ask the association if they'll reimburse it or refund, but it doesn't always happen. It just depends on the situation.
I think that's definitely something that you should talk with your district about too, because really that's something that should be across the board, regardless of what class or what CTSO you're in. That should be a district level policy. And if you don't have one in your district, maybe that's a good time to start that conversation, because it's so much easier to say, I'm sorry, this is district policy. When you're telling a parent that you have to pay $100 for a kid because he didn't show up, that's a hard conversation to have. But if you
it should be one you have way before they ever commit to going.
Yeah, in the pre-meeting stuff, that should already be there.
I got to make sure it's in my paperwork. I think it is. I can't remember. I haven't read through it in a while. I went and changed, added vaping in there to make sure they're not vaping. But that's the last thing I've really changed it because the school policies really haven't changed.
Students would never vape. Right?
No, never.
It won't happen.
Yeah. Those are great things. And I don't want to focus just on the negative, because really these trips are exciting and they're fun and they're just so full of rich experiences and opportunities. But knowing how you're going to respond if a student does break a rule, and knowing in advance, and having administrator support and being able to communicate those things. And you're always going to have one trip at one time at some point in your career where you have to make some hard decisions and where you have to choose what's right over what's easy. And so just knowing that you can do it.
Gotcha.
We, oh my gosh, I had something I was going to say right there and I lost it because you had a really good point and I was lost in what you were saying there.
That was so profound.
It was really good. We were, whenever we do our parent meetings and stuff, I always have one with my kids. We've done them before, like we said, when we're talking about all the rules and stuff beforehand. And everybody, the one thing is, if you're traveling with multiple groups, whenever we travel with a bunch of different classes. We take 108 kids to contest. You have to make sure everybody's on the same page. Yes. Like all the teachers know all the kids have the same rules. All the kids have the same expectations, and that's something a staff meeting involves, and that's what we try to do whenever we do it. And most schools do, but sometimes I've seen some where there's this teacher that's, rule follower at 11 p.m. and then you get the other guy that's coming in with his kids at midnight because they went and ate over at, Taco Bell and, cruised to Walmart right after that, whatever. And they came back. And so you just got to make sure that everybody in your staff that's going is on the same page.
That's good.
Yeah.
What do you do if you have to send a kid home? What does that look like?
That's hard.
Yeah.
And I think if you've been in this business long enough, it's happened, unfortunately. And making those calls late at night to a parent is hard. Again, that's understanding what your district travel procedures and guidelines require of you ahead of time, whether it's at the parent's expense and you're going to send them on a plane, or whether you're going to put them in hotel jail and they have to stay right next to you until you travel home on the trip. I think there's so many different varying circumstances that can affect those decisions, but don't make it alone. Make that with an administrator, a building principal, with district supervision and support.
Definitely. You don't want to be the teacher out on a limb and saying, well, this is the way it is, and maybe you're not right.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's nice to have a building principal or administrator actually go on the trip with you.
For sure.
We've been on several where we haven't had one just because of, subs and they need somebody to run the building. Sure. But having that principal there to help you make those decisions right then and there, besides phone calls, is amazing, because it's right there. You can get it done, and you can work it out face to face, and that person sees what happened. They're not just hearing about it, and it just makes it easier to make those decisions.
And if I could speak to the admin out there, I mean, that's what I would say too. Those teachers, you're doing everything you can to make sure those kids have a great experience. There's nothing bad happens to them. They have a good, memorable trip. And the teachers are truly giving their all. As administrators, we ought to be there to support them as best we can, whatever that looks like, whether that's pre-work on the front end, whether that's helping. You need somebody to take kids on a ride.
Whether that's showing up at 3:30 a.m. so that a drug dog can come sniff your bus and your principals come with signs and posters that say good luck.
Right, exactly.
That's meaningful.
Exactly. I totally agree. So if you're an admin out there, man, support those teachers. They're giving their all.
It really does mean a lot when the admin come, because the first time we had them come, I was like, oh, y'all came. Yeah. Y'all care.
For sure.
Yeah, some teachers are like, oh, no, they're here. I'm like, yeah, well, they came. Right. It does make us feel good. Have a support.
What else do we need to know? Okay, so we've gotten there. We've done our thing. Man, we're, things are sailing.
I think embrace the experience. Again, I cannot say this enough. the teacher sets the example. So if the teacher is grumpy about going to an opening session or a closing session, that's the kind of behavior you'll expect from your kids. If the teacher is cheering and ready about how amazing opening session's going to be, even if it's not that amazing, it's going to be a great experience for your kids. And I think that's where you decide, are you going to take advantage of every opportunity? Are you going to go to voting delegate sessions? Are you going to attend closing session, even if your particular students didn't qualify or advance to a final round? What's your standard and what's your plan as an advisor? And maybe it's not to go to closing session. Maybe it is to take your kids to Taco Bell at noon so they can get in their pajamas and get ready to come home on the bus. But be ready for those things ahead of time, know your kids, and make it fun.
I love the set the example thing. You know, I can't tell you how many teams that I've seen where somebody else is getting a gold medal and they're either just kind of sitting there like they're bored or they're up cheering somebody else on. And that's the example we got to set. You know, be proud, because every single one of these students, every single one of these advisors, they're there trying to win, trying to do the thing. And you know what? If they made it over you, great.
Yes.
Cheer them on.
We always did competitions like photo competition of the day. Baker says, go find the best photo with ... And then at night we would show photos and embrace. So try to make it fun for your kids.
I love it.
And another thing, give your kids, or if you can, if you have the time and have the ability to, make sure you try and take those kids to do something that they would never have gotten to do. Give them that experience to go and see. Like here, whenever we go to contests, there's a beach. Our school doesn't allow swimming, but we can go to the beach. You know, we can't get in the water, but we can build a sandcastle. And I remember there was one time I brought a kid down there to Corpus, and it's the Gulf. It's not the prettiest of beaches, but it's a beach. And he walks out there right to where the waves are coming in and hitting his feet, and he's like, I'm in the ocean. And he just started like jumping up and down and like running back and forth. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I mean, it's like, I forget, because I've been to the ocean, you know, I've been to like the ocean, and, but you forget some of these kids have never been outside the county, you know, and for them to go on that trip is probably one of the most exciting things that have ever happened to them.
And scariest.
Scariest.
Yeah. They don't have mom and dad there. So yeah, they're going to stress.
And I've taken several kids on those, and they come back from that trip and they literally tell you, thank you. As long as you give them that experience, you stay positive, you stay a good example, you give them a good experience, those kids are never going to forget it. And they're going to want to do it again. And they're going to want to continue to promote your program to do it, because they'll tell everybody else it was so much fun. And so then your program grows and you get more and more people involved.
That's the number one way to promote, is talk about the skills trip or the HOSA trip or whatever it is.
Pictures.
Absolutely.
So particularly when you're taking students to a national competition, they're going outside of their home state, right?
For sure.
Give your kids some accountability. Let them look up the fun things they want to do. Let them help plan a schedule. When I had students, when we were going to Anaheim, California, and they said, we want to go to Price is Right. I said, I don't know if we can do Price is Right. And they said, we know how. We can get the tickets. We're all 18. We want to go to the Price is Right. And we were able to make that happen. That's because awesome. The students had a goal, and students were able to have some autonomy in that planning process.
That's really cool.
Didn't you get on it too? Was that?
Yeah, I maybe lost a car. That's a
oh no, that's awesome.
That's a whole other podcast.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring up bad memories there.
Little tear going on there. So, got our trip back home. After action report. What's your responsibilities now?
Celebrate, 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 and do it timely. Be the advisor that has a plan within 24 hours of sending recognition to your campus, your principal, your PR team, whatever that process is for recognizing students. Some school districts like to recognize state winners or national winners at a school board meeting. Make sure you have pictures. So many times we get busy and we forget to take pictures. Put your officers in charge of taking pictures. But come back and do a report and celebrate and make sure your school can announce winners over the intercom during class or whatever the process is. But celebrate them big time and try to do it within 24 to 48 hours.
It's good. Another thing I would say too is kind of recap the event. Take some after action notes and talk to your students about, hey, what worked and what didn't. You know, if we're doing a contest, did you have everything you need?
Yes.
Maybe you're a senior graduating out, but what would you tell the next person coming in to be ready for if they do this contest that you just did? That's a great time to capture that, and don't wait too long on that one either, because then it's relying on memory and those kind of things.
I saw a really neat advisor one time who had a model of having their seniors write a letter to the next group of competitors for the upcoming year.
That's a great
so
idea.
They would always have their seniors come after a competition, write a letter, And then at the beginning of the year, she would pass that letter on to the freshman or to the sophomore who was competing for their first time. I thought that was really neat.
That's a neat idea.
Really cool. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that kind of just summarizes their experiences, and then it's like passing down the knowledge. Here you go, and it's all in writing, which is awesome.
That is cool. All right. Anything else we need to talk about?
I think it's great. Just be safe, be strategic, be ready to work hard. Know what is expected of you and help hold your kids accountable, and have a great time.
And always make sure that you follow school policies and rules, and make sure you're taking kids places that are school appropriate. That's another one.
Don't forget your own suitcase in the back of the car because you're loading everyone else's luggage into the bus.
Did you do that?
Not that I would know from personal experience.
Another thing is always pack socks, because every time I go to Corpus, I always forget socks, and I don't know why. I have to make a Walmart running and pick up socks.
I'll add that to my list.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. People always make fun of me. They always call me, "Did you pack socks?" Yep, I packed socks this time.
That's great.
Oh crap, I forgot to pack socks.
Well, guys, I hope this was helpful. I know for me, when I started out teaching, this would have been a great thing to listen to, just because you just don't know what you're getting into. So thank you guys so much for your insight. I know both of you guys have taken more students on more trips than anybody I know.
And thank you to all the teachers out there who are traveling with students, who are giving up their own family time to make a difference. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Yeah, that was awesome.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Appreciate y'all. You can watch and listen to all episodes of the CTE Podcast on Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube Podcast, and LubbockISDTV.com.